With all my guests, what inspired you to become an engineer? Kind of take us through your life story and how you got here.
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, I've kind of just always been, I would say attracted to solving problems, figuring things out. I mean, my family tells stories of when I was 2, 3 years old in the car. They'd ask me, oh, like, what's this math problem? What's that math problem? Doing multiplication at 3 or whatever. And then after that, I just sort of, would get into Legos. And then I found out about Scratch, which is just an online coding software, and so I would do things in that and then, play with sort of like child friendly CAD, if you will. And so I spent a lot of time just, designing things and coming up with things. And I really liked the math and the sciences. I was always good at chemistry, calculus. I would, help tutor my peers in eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade. And I just sort of found myself in that position. So then I was considering going and just getting a major in pure chemistry. But at the same time, I've always found myself to be a creative person.
Just for you personally, obviously you're getting your master's right now. Um, if you have a plan, what's your trajectory for your life? Where do you kind of see yourself or want to be in the next, 10 years, 5
Sure.
years?
So obviously wrapping up the masters is kind of priority, I guess. So that should be done in the next 4 months. And then I'm free finally from the clutches. But then past that, I will likely continue to work in R&D. It's a field that I didn't expect. I mean, similar to initially signing up to be an engineering student, I wasn't really aware of what R&D was. I was like, okay, you go be a chemical engineer. And I would hear things like, oh, you can go and work for Marathon Oil, or you can go and do water purification, or you can go and work for DuPont or all these companies. And then I got my internship initially just because I asked my college advisor, hey, like, do you have anybody that is accepting applications? I applied and then just wound up there because I thought that I needed an internship. And then lo and behold, here I am probably like 4-ish years later and have loved it, And so I think that that's going to be the industry I primarily reside in. Eventually, I would like to break off and do my own thing. Um,
Mhm.
and then also, like we've said, I run Engineer My Future. I really want to grow that because I don't think that engineering just needs to be a bunch of math and science. I think that there's so much more that, we should be putting out there and that there's just so much we can do to grow as engineers. So I really want to grow Engineer My Future and build that up as much as I can. And then personally, it's just climbing mountains. I'm going to run across the Grand Canyon later this year. I'm going to hopefully summit Rainier. I got a 50% shot at that actually happening. 50% of people turn around because it's bad weather or it's too cold or altitude sickness or whatever. But
Mhm.
hopefully that happens. And yeah, just continuing to do as much as I can and build out that life photo album. Aside from engineering, I am a gigging musician. I've played guitar for many years. I love martial arts and I just love like expressing myself and being creative and finding new takes and new ways to do things. I've been doing the guitar thing for a while and it's just been a really great way to express myself in something that's not so mathematically heavy.
Right. Yeah, I have the same kind of feeling. I love to read and write
Oh, nice.
poetry, so that's kind of my guitar for you, if you
Heck
will.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. Like, you need something outside of it doesn't matter how passionate you are, and it's great to be passionate about engineering and all these very heavy stuff, but you also got to have something to keep you sane, like you said, something
Right.
outside of it that you really enjoy that isn't just the engineering process. That's definitely super important. And I was actually going to ask, given that guitars and music is obviously an important part of your life, how do you think it's, if it has at all, how do you think it's affected you in engineering?
I think it got me an internship. So
Really?
yeah, well, so first, firstly, I guess coming out of high school, I was like, I'm gonna be a musician. I'm not gonna be an engineer. I'm going to engineering school, but eventually, like I'm dropping out and I'm gonna be Taylor Swift, guys. Just trust
Right.
me, And so that was the dream for a second. And then as I got deeper into engineering, I kind of, I don't know, that dream, it's not that it died. I just was like, oh, necessarily know if I want to do this anymore. Because I started to find so much joy in the other things that I was doing. Um, but then I got a music minor, so I was figured that I needed to, again, to keep me sane, just keep on doing things with music. So I
Right.
studied jazz guitar in college as well and got that minor. And then when I was interviewing for an internship, they saw that I was a chemical engineering major and then I also had a music minor written on my resume. They did not mention the chemical engineering major. The whole interview was, wait,
Really?
you're getting a music minor? Oh, that must mean that you have really good hand dexterity and that
Mhm.
are able to work well with your hands. A lot of the work that I do, both in my internship and currently, is super fine work. Designing
Okay.
something that's the size of a penny but has multiple components. Sometimes you're
Mhm.
welding under a microscope with a laser and dremeling things and working with something that has to be super precise.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, much to my surprise, I think the guitar playing actually helped me land my internship, which helped me land a full-time job. So I guess if
That's
anyone's
hilarious.
whoever's out there listening, if you pick up guitar or basket weaving or something like that, that might be the deal maker for you in your
That's
career.
funny. Yeah, I guess you never know, and then, that's another good point. You never know what, in those interviews or like in those application processes are gonna stand out. Speaking of internships and jobs and stuff, what I'll say strategies or experiences helped you stand out when you're applying for that first internship or full-time job?
Yeah. So I think kind of piggybacking off of the last point that you made prior to that question,
Hmm.
yes, getting your engineering degree and being, technically savvy, understanding core fundamental concepts, being good at calculus and thermodynamics and fluid mechanics and all of those things are important. But I think what'll really help you stand out and what's helped me stand out is just having a bunch of different life experiences. I'm obsessed with this idea of building a life photo album that you can be proud of. What I mean by that is just put yourself into situations that you wouldn't normally put yourself in. Be it something that's sort of in that engineering field. Maybe you sign up for a robotics club or you go and join, for chemies, there's Chemi Car where you build a car using chemical engineering, signing up for things like that. Or maybe it's, going to this national park or going and taking this trip or playing a gig or writing poetry or something like that. Those
Right.
types of things are what really make you stand out because now you have your high GPA, but you also have all this other stuff. And like you were saying, Neil, all of a sudden you can relate to a recruiter potentially. You never know if you go in there and you say, hey, oh yeah, like I have this little poetry thing and I just kind of write it, and you might brush it off. And then the recruiter is going to go, wait, no way. I've been writing poetry my whole life. And now you have
Right.
a connection with this person, which is going to really get your foot in the door. Because if you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I'm really good at school, I like doing my CAD, cool. Like that's kind of everybody, you know
Yeah. Right.
and therefore it makes you kind of hard to relate to. But I think if you can mention something that allows you to actually build a connection with a recruiter, they're going to be so much more likely to hire you on. And then when you're, on the team, they're going to want to train you and want to be around you because, you guys can be buddy buddy and not just, trainer and employee at that point.
Right.
So I think obviously it's important to do well in school, and 100% that is going to make you stand out. Like if you have bad grades, you're not going to look as good as somebody who has good grades. But I think that's a pretty binary thing. It's a 1-0, and I think that that's something that everybody kind of inherently understands. Because obviously, like we all just know if we get a 4.0, that's better than a 2.0.
Right.
But I think it's kind of those things that are less conventional that are going to make you stand out just because it makes you like, oh, this guy's really different. I kind of like this guy.
Transitioning now kind of to now you're working professionally, what habits or routines would you say have been the most helpful for your success as an engineer?
I think just having the ability to be patient with a problem. So like I said, I work in R&D, and sort of what that process looks like is I'll go into a meeting where there is no product yet. There's just a problem. And it'll say, hey, we need to solve X, Y, and Z for this customer. And this is the date. And so then in that meeting, we might spend an hour or 3 hours just kind of brainstorming, hey, I think that this would be a good idea. And then, somebody else says, well, what about this thing? Oh, well, we might need to change that. And you'll just brainstorm. And then after that, you'll leave and you'll go to your desk and you'll have to do a bunch of research. And then once you've done your research, you'll go and design something. And then you might even get to the point where you have, paid vendors to help make certain parts. Then you're putting it together yourself. And at that point, you're a month or two in and you realize it doesn't work. And I think that there can really just break a lot of people, especially if you're a few iterations in. Um, so I think it's really just having this ability to be like, all right, sure, it didn't work, and being okay with that. And then just being, willing and happy to take time to figure out why it didn't work and not just, oh crap, that's it, game over. Because everything has a solution. It just sometimes takes time. And I think that you see that in engineering school too. On a smaller scale, you might have a homework problem that frustrates you for a couple days, and then you have an epiphany at 3 a.m. in the morning, and all of a sudden, like, hurry up, get Python on. I got to finish coding this thing. And so, really, professionally, I think you just have that on a macro scale where all of a sudden your week-long problem becomes a year, you know.
Right.
But just feeling like, hey, it's okay. I know how to solve problems because that's what an engineering degree is. It's not a thermodynamics degree. It's not a chemistry degree. It's not a physics degree. It's a degree in solving problems. And so just having confidence in my ability to be able to do that, to recognize like I've done this before a million times. It's a different problem, but the process is still the same.
Engineers that I talk to, problem solving is like probably the number one thing that comes up in all of our kind of interviews, right? Um, so in your opinion, to what extent is problem solving, would you say that's the most desirable skill in an engineer, or, is there something else?
I mean, I think the problem solving is everything, honestly,
Mhm.
and obviously, yeah, like there is other skills, but I think if you can solve problems, you can learn everything else. And so let's say you need, I don't know, you need the technical ability to run thermal analysis on something. Obviously, that skill can just be acquired by like, oh, I need to learn this. I have a problem. I don't know how to run thermal analysis. And therefore I know how to solve that problem by, spending the time to learn it. And I feel like what trips people up is if they lack that ability to go and just sit with a problem and solve it, it can really come back to bite them in the butt, both educationally and professionally. And so I think that's the most important thing to develop. But that said, I mean, everybody can develop it. And the way you develop it is just by solving more problems. I think every time you solve a problem, be it a huge, massive project for your final or just, 2 + 2 = 4, whatever that problem is, you're just getting reps with it. I think by doing that, you're going to build actual problem solving skills. So something that's happened to me recently was um, I was in a class where I thought I understood how to solve the problem, but I essentially had just memorized the the way that singular problem was run. And then I went to go and take a test and was completely exposed for not knowing how to solve those types of problems. I just had memorized how to do it. And so I think to your point, Neil, like spending time with different problems allows you to not just build a routine of running it. Because if you're just plugging in equations over and over, but you don't really understand what you're doing, then you're not necessarily gaining problem solving ability. You're just really good at memorizing a formula. And so I think the biggest thing is thinking of yourself like as a chef, and you're taking your ingredients that and you might understand how to do this stuff mathematically, and you also understand this physical side of things over here, and maybe you're an artist and you have this creative side of you, and then being able to draw from I need this, I need this, I'm going to put these things together, and boom, there's my solution.
What do you think are the most critical skills that, both professional engineers and young engineers should develop in order to secure internships, advance their careers, stuff like that?
Sure. So I think on sort of the ground zero surface level thing, obviously get all your engineering fundamentals, like understand how things work fundamentally, get the physics, get the chemistry, um, be good at math and all of those basic things. But again, kind of like I've been saying, that's kind of binary. It's like, all right, cool, I got that. I don't think that's
Right.
necessarily the advice that people need. Um, I think the biggest thing, so the number one determinant of people's success is just grit. And so I think that's the biggest thing with engineering, just building this ability to stick to something, have that stick to itiveness. And so I think that's huge. And at this point, we've obviously belabored the problem solving thing. But I think beyond that, like just getting the ability to talk to people, to be able to have free flowing conversation, I think that's a huge thing that would be really beneficial for a lot of engineers. I find that a lot of engineers, you go to engineering school and get extremely good at technical skills, but the soft skills tend to lack. And I think that that is going to be a huge differentiator for engineers. It always has been. And I think it's just going to continue to be more and more and more, especially with the way that online is going and with AI and with social media and all that. Your ability to just communicate with somebody, to be a human, to be authentic is huge, because if you get into an interview and you freeze up because you just don't feel comfortable talking to somebody, that right there might be the reason that you struggle to go and get a job. However,
Right.
if you can go in there, you don't need to be the best guy. You don't need to be the biggest fish in the pond. But if you can confidently go in there, talk to somebody, and just be a human to them, I think that's going to get you really, really far in your career.
So would you say, you know, uh, with that, obviously that's kind of maybe a pitfall, practicing technical skills too much and maybe not practicing the soft skills enough. What are some other common pitfalls that young engineers face, and how can they avoid those?
A lot of young engineers spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to word this. I think that they essentially just sort of pigeonhole themselves into thinking that engineering is the only thing that they can spend their time doing. And I think that that's a problem that's pretty exclusive to STEM students. So if you go and look at like business majors, and of course, all of us engineers are like, oh, business majors, ew, not those guys. But really, if you look at them, they have they have so many other things going on in their life. And no, you don't necessarily need to just become a business major, but I think take something from that. And so realize that, like, yeah, you should be able to stay up until 4 a.m. doing an engineering problem, but you should also sometimes stay up until 4 a.m. going doing something totally different. And with that, just find other things that you enjoy, because if all you do is engineering, like you're gonna burn out eventually. It's just gonna happen, and it's only a matter of time. And also, I just think like we got 80 years, 100 years, or whatever it is. And so eventually, we're gonna look back on our lives, and I just want to go, hey, like I was an engineer, and I'm super proud of what I did as an engineer. I love that I was able to do all these complex problems, solve all of these things, help the world. But at the same time, I did all these other amazing things in my life. Because, like I said earlier, at that point, like now you have a life photo album that is full of memories. It's full of so many amazing things. And it's not just like, oh, yeah, I punched in and just left at 5 and I was really good at CAD, because to me, it's like, all right, cool. Like that's all of us as engineers. What else do you have to offer the world? Because I think
Right.
everyone's got their own unique take on things. And it's really interesting to me to see, like, holy cow, like I didn't know that Neil did poetry. This is so interesting.
So we were talking a little bit about, you know, how maybe some AI or even like social media stuff is changing kind of the realm of engineering, if you will, and affecting people personally, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, how do you see the role of engineers or engineering as a whole evolving over the next, 5 to 10 years?
That's something that a lot of people ask me about, on my through my socials. I get
Mhm.
asked all the time, like, oh, Alex, are you scared of AI? Do you think that AI is gonna, wipe out engineers as we know it? And I prefer to be, I guess, on the glass half full side of that thing. I really do think that AI is just going to help us do our jobs. I've heard it be said that, like, at one point we were all farmers, and then the tractor came out,
Right.
and we don't. we're not sitting here now in 2025 being like, man, if only the tractor didn't come out, we still could be farmers, you know? And so I think that AI is just going to help us do our jobs more efficiently. And it's going to kind of cut out some of that just nitty gritty work that we don't necessarily need to do. And I think that for engineers, it's going to be really positive because it's going to allow us to be much more creative in our careers. And I think for a lot of us, like that's what we want. You know, we don't want to just, most engineers' dream of being an engineer is not filling in 1,000 cells on a spreadsheet. It's creating a product, creating a device, something that we genuinely think could help the world. And so I think the AI is just going to be a tool in doing that. That said, right now is the time to learn how to use it. And so I'm a very big proponent of, spend time with AI. Doesn't mean you do everything through AI. And obviously, I think us engineers know the best that AI, ChatGPT does not know every answer that you want it to know. You have to learn how to properly prompt engineer. But I think that developing that skill right now is going to, again, be a big differentiator for us as engineers because in 5 years, in 10 years, when AI really does take a foothold in things, we're going to be at the advantage going, hey, I've been using this stuff, since it came out. I understand how it works. Now let's, implement it and integrate it into our lives, into our work, and just how can we use it to make us more efficient?
Mm. That's really good points. Yeah. So, are there any, you know, I'll say maybe resources or books or, anything that helped you that you would recommend to young engineers for, just general, maybe even just general life advice or, advice for their careers?
Sure. Um, the first thing is just talk to people who are ahead of you in all realms of life. So that doesn't just mean like going and talking to a hiring manager at a big firm. It might, and it does a lot of the time. But at the same time, like find somebody who has just done random things in their life and just talk to them, for 20 minutes. Hey, how'd you get into that? Oh, that's really interesting. Just like the conversation we're having right now. I think that you get a lot of valuable insights just from talking to people and getting their take and their experiences on things. And then again, it's going to make you a better conversationalist. I think it's important to just take in as much knowledge as you can, read as often as you can. And I've recently become a bigger sort of supporter of reading textbooks. I was very like, you don't need to use the textbook, just use the slides. And I do think that's true. But at the same time, like if you spend 20 minutes a day just kind of skimming through parts of a textbook, you're going to learn things a lot deeper than most of your peers as an engineer. And so I think that that can be a big advantage for you. And I think that you'll see that really take place, 5 years into reading textbooks. It's like, holy cow, where did you learn all this stuff? You're like, oh, page 428 of chemical processing principles by blah, 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 blah. But then also just taking knowledge from everything. Like I said, with the soft skills, engineers are taught how to do complex problems, but they're not taught how to manage a budget. And then engineers go and start working and they're like, man, I make all this money. What the heck do I do with it? And
Right.
so just, taking knowledge from stuff like that, because I think it's important. It's going to allow you to be more well-rounded as a person.
Mhm.
And just expose yourself to stuff.
So, I really agree with that too. I mean, I think blending kind of not just focusing on engineering, like blending your life, your engineering life, your career with, whatever makes you happy, keeps you sane, like we said in the beginning, right? Whatever makes you enjoy life, because obviously I enjoy engineering. I love the problem solving, I love working on the problems and, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing it because I want to do that in my career for the rest of my life. But at the same time, you need some of that other stuff to make you well-rounded. And it's noticeable when you're not well-rounded or when you're only super focused on one thing, you know, like you said, it's harder to relate. And not just, not just as general life advice, even in your career, if it's harder to relate to you, to relate to your coworkers, to relate to that hiring manager, right? Like it's not going to, that's one of the stepping stones for advancing your career is relating to people and really communicating with them well. So it's really even for your career, but also for your general life, got to do other things that make you happy and that kind of round you out a little bit.
I think if I make jokes about it all the time, but I genuinely feel that if I go and ask you, hey Neil, what do you like to do? Like outside of work, outside of school, what do you like to do? And you go, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know?
Yeah,
You have
right.
24 hours in a day. What you're only working 8 of them. Like what else are you doing? You know? And so I think it's
Yeah,
just like you're saying, it's so important because it's you're able to relate to people and the way you network is not by solving problems. You know, oh look, Neil, look how fast I can do this problem. All right, let's start a business together. Like it doesn't work that way, you know.
right.
The way you're gonna network with people is by building friendships. I think that in engineering school, there's such a push for like you gotta network. You gotta go and talk to these people, get your resume out there, start networking. I've never had success from hey, I just met Neil 5 minutes ago. Neil, give me your phone number. Okay, cool. I'm going to text you in 6 years. I hope you remember me. Hey, I'm that kid that you met 6 years ago in the hallway. Can I have a job? You know,
Right. Yeah.
but if we're super good friends, I say, hey, I need your help, man. Like,
Hmm.
what can you do? You're going to be so much more likely to help me.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad, he's given me a lot of networking tips. Biggest tip that he's given me that I've taken to heart is you got to network when you don't need something from the other person, right? That's the time that you have to network because then when you do need something, you kind of have that ethos of like, well, we are actually friends. I do actually like you. I'm not just talking to you because I need a job or I need an interview or, whatever it is, right? That's
Right.
really the secret to networking that either a lot of people miss or they don't realize how important it is when they are networking is to, network when you don't need anything, right? Really just build those
Yeah.
friendships and those relationships.
I mean, if you connect with somebody on LinkedIn as your quote unquote networking, and then when you decide that you need something, you have to scroll through their account to remember what they do. They're not a member of your network. They're
Right.
just another number, you know.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Alex. I think we had a really great conversation and